The Essex Record Office is an archive. It's a place where our history is kept. Our oldest document is over 1,000 years old. The newest one just came in today. There are many documents here at the Essex Record Office connected to the Peasants Revolt. I've chosen 6 for us to take a closer look at, but there are many more to discover. The Peasants Revolt happened in 1381, mostly in the summer. We have a document here dating back to 1377, which specifically mentions someone who later becomes a key figure in the triggering event of the Peasants' Revolt. John Ball is really important because it was his views that radicalised a lot of the peasants into feeling that there could be another and a better way. He was someone who had a lot of influence because he was a member of the church, a member of the clergy. However, he slightly went off script and started talking about a society that was equal for everyone, where there were no masters and peasants. A lot of people liked that idea and started following his ideals. That, of course, landed him in a lot of trouble and eventually meant he was excommunicated, so he was fired and ended up in prison. However, during the Peasants' Revolt, he was broken out and continued to preach in this way. Henry Bolingbroke was the son of John of Gaunt. When the peasants broke into the Tower of London and started dragging people out and executing them, his life was very much in danger, which is why he went and hid in the cupboard. We don't know how long he was in there for. It may have been hours, it could even have been as much as a day. He did survive, and he becomes very important later on when we find out more about Richard II and what happened to him next. The king at the time was Richard II. He came to the throne aged only 10 years old. At the time of the Peasants' Revolt, he was 14 years old, but successfully navigated that difficult time in history. In fact, in doing that, his confidence was so buoyed that he went on to reign increasingly independently, throwing off the advice of those closest to him. At a certain point, he'd locked so many people out of his life that they started to resent him, including Henry Bolingbroke, the young man that had survived the Peasants' Revolt by hiding in the cupboard. He gathered an army together, rose up against Richard II, took his crown, imprisoned him, and some say directly led to his death, perhaps by starvation, in 1400, when Richard II was only 33 years old. So the documents that we have are brilliant, but they don't tell us the full picture. Most notably, missing from these documents are women and children, who would have made up more than half the population. We know very little about how they were involved or what happened afterwards, simply because it wasn't considered that they were important enough for that information to be written down. Of course they were there. Of course they would have been part of life, society, and would have had to pay the taxes as well. So that is still a mystery that the documents don't reveal to us. The Peasants' Revolt was so important in history for a number of reasons. First of all, it ended the feudal system. That had been in place since the Norman conquest. It didn't end straight away as the peasants demanded, but it gradually eroded its power in the decades following the Peasants' Revolt. Next, and I think this is a legacy we still have today, it meant people who worked in Britain were listened to. They found their voice, they made demands, and they were listened to and respected. And that is something that since the Peasants' Revolt, I think has increased. And that is notable, I think, when we come to the 2012 Olympics, where the life of the British workers was so important and so valued, there were no deaths in the construction of the Olympics. And I think the roots of that go right back to the Peasants' Revolt, when the workers started to be respected and listened to. My favourite is the one where at the start they explain why there aren't any earlier documents, so they feel like they have to make a little note, and they make it in Latin because that's the official language at the time, and it says in the paragraph, if we translate it, it says the most wicked insurrection, and by that they mean the Peasants' Revolt, and then they go, oh, we have to start the records again, and so they do, and then this is quite a long scroll filled with all the normal and boring things of everyday life and court.